The Comedic Loop. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one. Welcome to today's trip report. Today's report is user submitted. It is a acid report, standard LSD at 250 micrograms of a dose, sent in by Ferg dude, aka Father Fergus, and he took this about 4 years ago. Male. We don't have too much information from him on that, and keep that to himself for privacy reasons and whatnot. And since this is a more user submitted, it is a user submitted report, I probably am not going to include like the breakdowns or just the thought pieces at the end that I normally would for online reports, just so we can highlight the user more and the report more. So without further ado, let's get into this. This was my first acid trip, and I had previously only done cannabis and alcohol. Me and my friend had been curious in psychedelics leading up to this trip, hearing stories of friends, and a pursuit for the psychedelic fantasy we'd been tempted by. Being naive and curious, we had bought 5 250 micrograms of acid. We then proceeded to sublingually take 250 micrograms of acid. Trip setting: home alone, aside from sister, with a good friend, and generally felt pretty good. 1900 hours. The bladder didn't taste of anything, which had cleared up some anxiety of the purity as no test kit had been used. Now we just had to wait. 1940 p.m. First effects had started to come in waves of euphoria. We were listening to Frank Zappa, The Closer You Are, and the effects had started to creep in. At first I started to do impressions of other friends, and for a second we had both thought I was somebody else. This increasingly added to the trippiness and the bizarre effects the LSD onset was giving us. I then proceeded to lie on the floor and felt a strong euphoric body load as me and my friend proceeded to melt in the floor. Colors became deeper and vision was clear and crisp, like somebody had bumped the graphics to 4K. By now, my sister had walked into my room as I completely forgot she was in the house. I recalled her asking something and then concernedly laughed, slowly closing the door behind her. 20 hours. Once I had a vague idea of what was happening, I stumbled onto my bed. I felt some sort of breakthrough and clarity had been made, and that the key to what's behind the doors to reality had been given to me. I reached into my pocket and found a note. After crude attempts of investigation, I had realized that I had made a checklist of things to do. I had read somewhere that writing a list of things to do during a trip can help out. This later turned out not to be the best idea. Hello, traveler. Steps: find Milo, a friend of ours. Make a Chinese. Enjoy the trip. After hysterically laughing at the letter, I scrunched it up and shoved it into my pocket. 20 hours 30 minutes. At this point, me and my friend had been running frantically around my house as Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd had been guiding us on our colorful voyage. Visual strong patterns had overlapped our vision, making it a challenge to see almost anything, like when you have a migraine. The patterns consisted of geometric swirls and colorful flickers of light. This had turned out to be quite a success. However, something wasn't quite right. My friend looked at me and shouted, "Wait, the vinyl stopped!" After running upstairs at lightning speed, it turned out to be only halfway through the disc. We proceeded to turn the volume to max and got back to our manic adventures. 21 hours to 23 hours. I remember looking at my friend and saying, "Oh yeah, Chinese." We had bought Chinese for dinner and still had not eaten it. We then got in a loop of repeating Chinese, pot of joy, we need to find Milo, followed by the vinyl stopped. This continuous loop made up a good 3 hours of the trip, and although we laughed at every repetition, there was this underlying deep, dark feeling. I recall my friend manically and then murmuring anxiously, "This is bad, this needs to stop." This was a dark feeling, and the loop made us feel entranced, like there was no escape from this eternal, repetitive reality that was both funny and dark. It almost felt like a comment on our relationship as friends and the dark jokes we tell with an underlying feeling of darkness and guilt that is unavoidably comedic. 23 p.m. to 1. After we had finally broken from this loop, I recall sitting in the top room of my house. We were in no way coming down, and my friend was chewing posters on the wall. I also remember my friend asking what was going on, with my reply being, "We took acid, dude," and his reply being, "Why have we done this?" I remember seeing a mist-like texture overlap the walls, with it slowly melting off the walls, and it looked beautifully vivid and real despite me knowing it was a hallucination. The mist had turned to letters and felt like an entity was communicating through hieroglyphics. I tried communicating back and felt a deep sense of clarity, and as what I had read was a deep philosophical answer to reality. I knew it, but I couldn't put it into words, like I had solved the biggest question in existence. After this mystical event, I proceeded to go to the toilet and found my hands were pulsating, and my reflection was a reptilian version of myself, which was intriguing. 1 a.m. onwards. By now, the patterns had died down and vibes had also calmed down more. We finally ingested the Chinese just to officially end the loop, and we then went outside for a walk. The walk was beautiful, and with the enhanced vision made it delightful. We then went back home at around 4 to 5 a.m. and went to sleep. This was a wonderful, strange first acid trip, and still remembered by me and my friend as a classic happy tripping.